Recently I played Men of Iron by Richard Berg and I really enjoyed this game, and so I also started playing its sequel, Infidel, still by Richard Berg, and these are games of tactical combat in the Middle Ages. They're clearly based on a strong historical background, so I was a little surprised when I saw that the same designer, Richard Berg, had released a game with a slightly different topic, and this game is Godzilla, Kaiju World Wars, a game definitely of colossal mayhem and distraction, in which in fact the players take the role of kaijus, which is the Japanese word for the gigantic monsters of Japanese sci-fi like Godzilla and friends and enemies, and in the role of these monsters, the players will go around the world destroying cities, fighting each other, throwing tanks at each other. There's a lot of stuff that can go on in this game. So a theme that I enjoy a lot, a designer that I appreciate and respect. It really seems a match made in heaven. Can anything possibly go wrong with this? Yeah, maybe it can. The real problems start with the rulebook, which is full of ambiguities. There are just passages that are very vague. A lot of things are left implicit. Sometimes the phrasing is kind of awkward and hard to understand. There are almost no illustrations, almost no examples. After reading the rulebook, really you have more questions, I think, that things that you have clear in your mind. You set up the game, you start trying things. If you're hoping to find any help in the info cards, which are player aids, and you're already thinking, well, why did they have to print the player aids on cards and you had to go through the deck to look for the information that you're looking for? Why not just printing them on a single player aid? But whatever. The problem is that these info cards sometimes present information which is directly and completely opposite to what the rule book says, and then you're like, what, which one? And then you have to go online to read long discussions on Board Game Geek to figure out what the right interpretation is. Richard Berg, luckily enough, has been very kind in this, very supportive. I also bothered him with several messages. He always wrote me back. So it is really problematic. You have to do a lot of work before you can actually play the game, and still, as of now, things to me feel pretty fluid. If I say something wrong, I apologize in advance. I'm just not sure if I'm playing the right game or a variant. There are just so many times where you will have to house rule things with your friends and cross fingers that you got it right and go with it. Each player has a board representing its kaiju, and each board has two sides. One is used in the basic game and the other one is used in the advanced game. The only difference is that in the advanced game you have some special abilities that you can use under certain circumstances. Both sides of the board have two important tracks. One is the health meter. Of course, you will lose health when you get hit by your enemies, and you will regain health when you heal. And then you have the energy track. During your activation, you will spend energy when you're performing actions, and different actions will cost different amounts of energy. So you can keep performing any combination of actions until you go down to 0 energy points, and then at the beginning of the next turn you will go back to 10, which is the default number of energy points that you have. However, you can also decide to stop taking actions earlier and save some energy points in case you want to perform defensive actions when it's not your turn and the other players are attacking you. When you are performing actions, you will gain destruction points. When you're destroying buildings or eliminating military units, you gain destruction points. If you have 10 or more destruction points than any opposing monster, then you become enraged. And being enraged means that you have that extra self-confidence, that adrenaline boost that allows you to use 11 energy points instead of 10. You can spend energy to move, and moving costs a basic amount of 1 energy point for each new square in which you enter. You can move orthogonally but not diagonally. However, if you are entering squares that contain other objects, then you have to spend extra energy points. It will cost extra energy points to enter a square that contains a military unit. That military unit will fire at you as you do so, but it will also be the last thing that they will do before you stomp them out of existence. You can enter such landscape features as lakes or gardens, again by spending the appropriate amount of energy points. You can destroy buildings by simply walking through them and by paying an amount of energy points equal to 1 plus the number of stories that that building is made of. In this case, for example, you will spend 5 energy points and you will destroy that building and you will place there a pile of rubble. Instead, you will get destruction points for doing that, and then you will place your kaiju there and hope that you can balance him well enough so it doesn't fall from the pile of rubble. Military units are placed on the board at the beginning of the game as per scenario instructions. There are 2 types of military units, and they are tanks and personnel carriers. Military units are maneuvered by the players cooperatively according to certain guidelines. Any time that the most destructive kaiju enters the line of sight of military units according to the rulebook, or any time that any kaiju enters the line of sight of military units according to the player rate, then the units that have a line of sight on that kaiju will move 2 squares toward that kaiju. For example, we move this kaiju here, in this square here. These 2 units still do not have a line of sight, which is blocked by the buildings, but these 2 units do, so they both move 2 squares to move against the kaiju that just moved. If the kaiju keeps moving, then all units that still have a line of sight will keep moving. Tanks attack up to 3 squares away whenever the target kaiju moves in the line of sight and within range. They also attack when the kaiju tries to stomp them or grabs them to throw them against something. Personnel carriers are weaker. They cannot attack per se unless the kaiju is stomping them or grabbing them to throw them against something. That is the only time when the kaiju is close enough that the weapons can actually do some damage, or they have a chance to do so. Either way, the attacks are resolved in the same way. Roll a 6-sided die. On a roll of 6, the kaiju loses a point of health, otherwise nothing happens. Each kaiju has an attack card which represents ranged attacks. Ranged attacks can hit up to 3 squares away, cost 1 point of energy, and the kaiju must be adjacent to rubble or military units in order to use this type of attack. Those are the things that you are throwing at your target. And then there are other attacks which are melee attacks. Combat cards may have red icons that represent attacks, they may have blue icons that represent defensive actions, or they may have both. In that case, they can be used either for attack or for defense. You can attack a building. In that case, you play a card, you spend the necessary amount of energy, and the building goes down automatically. It doesn't attack you back, but you can use an attack to attack another kaiju, and in that case, things are a little more complicated. To initiate an attack, the attacker plays a combat card face down. If the defender is adjacent, that is, if this is a melee attack or a ranged attack at a range of 1, then the defender also gets to play a combat card face down. It can be a free defensive card that doesn't have any energy cost associated, or it can be a card that does cost energy points to play in case the defender still has some energy points saved for precisely that purpose. The 2 combat cards are then revealed at the same time. The players spend the necessary energy to play the card. They may also spend some extra energy if there is a text that allows them to do so to make the effect of the card stronger. Then they just align the icons of the attacker with those of the defender and they roll a die. You see there are small numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They roll a die which can be modified by the text of one or both of the cards, and then they look at the modified result, and that will tell them the result of that combat. The icons that will be indicated by the die roll and that are on the side of the attacker indicate the result that is inflicted on the defender, and the icons of the defender indicate the result inflicted on the attacker. For example, if the modified number is a 6, then the attacker knocks down the defender. This icon means knocked down. If the result had been a 1, then the defender attacks with its claws, the attacker inflicts damage. You will just have to learn what these icons are. An exception to the rule that the icon of a player apply to the other player is this icon here, which means that the owning player is exposing a weak point. If a weak point matches a special attack, which are these attacks indicated by these white stars, then in that case you ignore the result on the icon and you just look at this text here. For example, if here the modified die roll had been a 4, then you ignore the stun result, you look at the bottom of the card here, you look at the 3 stars, and that means that in this case the result of that combat is a grapple. That means that now the two kaijus have grabbed each other and they both lose health points and they cannot move until next turn. After all players have activated their kaiju, then you will look at this track where you have 6 events cards faced up. Those events cards have been drawn from the event deck. Then a player will roll a die that will indicate which card is resolved this turn, and you simply pick up that card, read the text, and resolve it. And there will be all sorts of events that may happen because of these cards. You may have artillery that attacks a kaiju, bazooka units enter the game, Air Force uses cadmium missiles, nuclear missiles, all sorts of things that may happen. I think that these cards do add quite some flavor to the game. I like the unpredictability that comes from these events, so I like them quite a bit. After you resolve the event indicated by that card, suppose it was a 3, you remove that card, you draw another card, and you just replace it there. Oh, what a coincidence, just a card that I wanted to show you. In fact, some of the cards may be purchasable cards, and players can purchase that card by spending the indicated amount of energy. If a player does so, then he takes the card from the track, places it in his hand, and can use it later. And the effects of the purchasable cards are usually pretty good, so you do want to buy them when they are available. So players continue activating events, and they go on like this until a player or a team of players meet the victory conditions for the chosen scenario. After I went past the problems coming from the player aids and the rulebook, and I was able to put together a set of rules that seemed to make sense and I felt comfortable teaching to my friends, then I taught the game to them. We started playing it, and guess what? The game turned out to be fun. Everybody liked the energy point system that allows you great flexibility in the type of actions that you take and the order in which you take them. You can do a lot of different things. Everybody liked the combat system, so simple and yet so fun. You have a bluffing element, but yet it is not just rock, paper, scissors, because if you know your abilities and the type of effects that you're trying to generate and you know what the other kaijus can do, then you can manipulate that. You have a little bit of investment aspect because you have to decide how many energy points you're investing now, how many you save for later. It is just fun. The theme, it's totally there. The game really oozes with theme. However, after a while that we played, a couple of other problems started surfacing. There were situations that were not covered, not even by the large set of rules that one can put together by, gathering information online, and so we had to house rule things here and there. Certain cards, event cards, but also cards representing the powers of the kaijus just seem to be too powerful. Sometimes a single card can really throw the game out of balance. Sometimes a scenario, even after repeated plays, seems to be impossible to win by one of the two sides. So there are elements in the game that still seem to lack a little bit of balance. Our impression overall is that the game would definitely benefit from some more development, would have benefited from some more playtesting, some more fine-tuning, and in a certain way, when you get this game, my impression is really that you're getting a build your own monster game kit. You have beautiful components, even though not the most functional ones, a general set of rules starting from which you can start customizing and fine-tuning and house ruling and putting together a monster that meets the expectations and the desires of yourself and your own gaming group. So I would say if you don't mind this idea of putting together your own monster game with these components, then you may enjoy this game. If you're a huge Godzilla fan, I think that you would not mind some of the problems that I mentioned here. You can be forgiving and just enjoy the Godzilla immersive experience. Maybe you want to play the game with your kids, so you buy it as sort of like a toy, then you simplify and you can play it with your kids. I think you can have a blast. If you're approaching this game certainly with the irony that the theme requires, you're a big monster destroying cities, you cannot take that too seriously. So you're approaching it with irony, but still from a gamer's perspective. So you wouldn't mind having this fun theme coming to life through a game that feels fine-tuned and tight. Well, in that case, maybe you will want to wait until Godzilla Choose Zero is released, because my impression is that this game is not quite there yet.